What's that smell?
Oh, that would be me. I've been swimming in raw sewage. I love it. I love it.
That's the signal. Let's go. Do it.
Welcome to the first ever Trimming the Musical Fat podcast. I'm Stephen Nicholson.
And I'm Paul Nicholson.
And together with our guests over the next hour or so, we'll be putting some musical wrongs to rights by trimming albums that are arguably too damn long. And we're starting big. We're taking on the Beatles' classic White Album. So what's going to get dropped? Blackbird? Dear Prudence? Birthday? Revolution 9? I hope so. Find out later. And we've got guests to help us do this, including a huge Beatles fan who was just turning 18 when the White Album came out. Listen out for him later on the episode and find out how an accident stopped him actually seeing the Beatles live. So, how are you, Paul?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, it's quite funny because we've got three Pauls going to be on today, so when you ask me...
Yeah. We're making it easy for ourselves having three Pauls on our first ever podcast. Right. So yes, I'm sure there's going to be absolute mayhem when the guests arrive. So why are we doing this? Well, we're both huge music lovers and got into music during the kind of transition period where cassettes and vinyl, the sales of them were dropping quite significantly and CDs were becoming the favoured consumer choice for buying music. And what we started to see with that shift, and this actually continues in the digital streaming age, is artists taking the opportunity to increase the duration of their albums. No longer were they limited to a 50-minute single vinyl record. Now, with CDs, and the huge reduction in vinyl sales, they could actually release single albums that lasted nearly 80 minutes. However, just because you can doesn't mean you should, and there are, in our humble opinion, and that's all they are, opinions, a huge number of albums that would have been so much better by keeping to that 40, 50-minute duration. Get rid of those extra 10 to 30 minutes of music, the extra music that's not as strong as the best tracks on the rest of the album. Those tracks, take them off and they could be old school B-sides or put on the CD singles and so on. So with this podcast, in each episode, we're going back in time to revisit an album and trim its musical fat. We hope by doing that, we make the album a better, more satisfying listening experience. We'll also share our own personal experiences in relation to that album. We'll talk about the critical reception the album received, how well it sold, its chart positions, and we'll also share some interesting fun facts from the year of the album's release, just to give you some context of the world it was unleashed into. Now, there are three golden rules that we and our fellow guests need to follow with each album that we critique. So the first one is the album must be no longer than 50 minutes once we've edited it. The second is for the tracks that are selected, they must be resequenced for the best listening experience. And the third and final one is that what are the tracks we are allowed to incorporate into our resequenced shorter album. And those will be tracks that were recorded at the same time as the album we're discussing, but which did not feature on the album. So these could include A's and B-sides. So, for example, today we have Hey Jude, which was a single, and Revolution was a B-side. Those songs were not included on the White Album. Now, should they have? That's something we'll talk about. We'll talk about alternative versions. They could be included, remixes or different takes of the tracks. It could be tracks that were recorded at the time but not officially released until years later. It could be tracks that were on compilations or movie soundtracks instead. Well, we didn't want to do this on our own, so we invited two esteemed musical experts onto our first show to provide some informed commentary. Sadly, they were unavailable, so we've got these two guys instead. So welcome, Paul Murphy and Paul Mellon. How are you guys?
Hello.
Yeah, good, thanks. Thank you for that kind introduction there, Stephen.
I'm delighted you've both managed to find your unmute buttons as well.
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, I'm looking forward to tonight. And with that sort of not only introduction, but also hearing that background story, I mean, I can't wait to hear this podcast going out to the bigger audience, because I'm sure they're really looking forward to it. People look back on this first episode, I think, and they look back with nostalgia. It might be a little bit rough around the edges compared to when you're broadcasting your podcast to 50 million people, but they'll look back on this with a little bit of nostalgia here. So,
yes, I'm absolutely sure this will be a seminal moment in musical history with the release of this podcast, and I'm glad you're here to enjoy it and talk about the significance of it. Anyway, as we record this, we're about a year into a COVID-19 lockdown here in Scotland, and well, that's worldwide, isn't it? So let me just ask, how are you guys finding it, and what's the first thing you want to be able to do once we get back to some semblance of normality? So maybe Paul Mellon, let's jump to you.
Well, I think I'd like to get out walking again, get up into the hills and the mountains, the highlands, get some fresh air, stretch my legs, and then go to the pub for a few pints.
Yes, I think that's going to be very high on most Scotsmen's lists post-COVID, I should say. What about you, Paul Murphy?
I think it's hard to believe it's been 12 months. It's sort of flown by in a way, and it makes you sort of realise just how quickly time can go past. That was a year just gone like that. I think what am I looking forward to the most? I think just it is like those little things. Being able to get out and about a bit more, it does feel like just being able to get outside of the city of Edinburgh legally, to be able to get outside of that. So I think just those small things to start off with, that would be something to really look forward to. I'm not too bothered about the international holidays or stuff like that. I think it would just be nice to do things locally. I mean, something that I did walk past the other day was a restaurant, and looked at the window and I was like, oh, there's a... it'd be great just to go there, but you can't, so it's little things like that I'm looking forward to, and then building up to the other stuff. But I think it does make you appreciate some of the smaller things that you've missed out on.
Yeah, agreed. What about you, brother Paul?
Yeah, so probably just same family, and particularly my brother. I really miss seeing him. So
I'm sure that's top of your list.
No, probably. It sounds cheesy and corny, but yeah, definitely seeing family and going back to the football. Actually, I've really missed football. Watching football. It's not even on the TV. It's not the same watching football without fans in the stadium.
Same watching Falkirk, is it?
No. So yeah, that for me, that's what I probably miss. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I think family, but also I think the three things that always spring to mind are being able to go to the pub with friends to watch a football match. That would just be awesome. To go to a restaurant, a nice restaurant, have a meal, and just go to the cinema again, and sit there with my hot dog, popcorn, sweets, juice, and add on about 2,000 calories in one sitting. I really miss that. Okay, guys. Well, great you're all here today. We're delighted as we embark on a journey to dissect the White Album. So it's the tale of the tape. Let's actually start talking about the subject of this episode, the Beatles' White Album. Was the Beatles' only studio double album, had a plain white cover, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. It was released in both the UK and the US in November 1968. There were a total of 30 songs on it, 17 on disc 1, 13 on disc 2. Now, the album is 94 minutes in length, which means we need to lose at least 44 minutes today to bring it down to our minimum of 50 minutes duration. Right, Paul, over to you.
Okay. So the critical reception to the album when it was released in November 68 was mostly positive, although there were some that complained about the lack of a coherent style, while others actually recognised this as being the album's strong point. And sales-wise, the album is actually the Beatles' best-selling album, selling 24 million copies, which is amazing for a double album. And so it went 24 times platinum in the US and 2 times platinum in the UK, as Sgt. Pepper is their biggest selling album in the UK. So, and of its chart positions right across the board, number 1, UK, US. The Beatles' streaming figures at this point are 1.7 billion streams, and obviously that's going to change quite a lot, more and more.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And now tell us, what were the top 10 selling songs in 1968?
Okay, so the top 10 selling songs in 1968 were, at number 10, Tighten Up by Archie Bell and the Drells. At 9, Mrs. Robinson by Simon and Garfunkel. At 8, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly by Hugo Montenegro. At 7, This Guy's in Love with You by Herb Alpert. At 6, Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. At 5, People Got to Be Free, The Rascals. At 4, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding. At number 3, Honey by Bobby Goldsboro. At 2, Love is Blue, Paul Marut. And at number 1, guess what? It's Hey Jude by the Beatles. Okay.
Good to hear, good to hear.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move on then to the top 10 grossing movies of 1968, Paul.
Okay, so at number 10 was The Lion in Winter. Number 9, Yours, Mine and Yours. Number 8, Rosemary's Baby. Number 7, Planet of the Apes. Number 6, Oliver. Number 5, Romeo and Juliet. At number 4, Bullet. At number 3, The Odd Couple. At number 2, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And number 1 film of 1968 was Funny Girl.
Anybody got any favourites in there, guys?
Yeah, Bullets, definitely.
Bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Oliver as well.
And of course, Rosemary's Baby.
Baby.
Filmed at the Dakota building where
The Connection. Yeah.
John Lennon lived and was assassinated outside of.
That's right. So they would have moved into the Dakota like 4 or 5 years after Rosemary's Baby was filmed there. That's right.
And I have to say, I don't know if I've ever heard of Yours, Mine and Yours.
Neither have I, actually.
All the others on the list, yeah. And the thing that strikes me a lot about it is that the top 10 in 1968 is perhaps got a bit more substance than perhaps the top 10 of 2018.
Not a single superhero film in there. What a shame.
Yep, no well, I was going to say no sci-fi epics. 2001. Anyway, Paul, let's move on to what were the news stories making the most headlines in 1968.
Yeah, so 3 stories, and quite significant from 1968, were the assassination of Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King was the leader of the American Civil Rights Movement. There were student protests all over the world, and some of the things the students were protesting about were civil rights, the Vietnam War, and female equality. And in the UK, the Race Relations Act was passed, making it illegal to refuse housing, employment, or public services in Great Britain because of their ethnic background?
So we're now going to move on to Trim the Talk. So what we're going to do as part of Trim the Talk is we are going to try, all the guests on the show, answer as many questions related to today's topic, which is the Beatles and the White Album. We're going to do our best to answer all the questions we've got here in only 3 minutes. This could be carnage. So, gentlemen, are you ready?
Ready.
That was overwhelmingly slightly positive. So, I'm going to start the timer now, and we are off.
3 minutes start now.
Okay, question 1. Can you describe the Beatles in 3 words? Paul Mellon.
Most innovative band.
Fab, gear, groovy.
Paul Nicholson.
Inspirational, important, happiness.
For me, positive, inspirational, daring. Hey, have you, well, none of us have seen the Beatles live, but have you seen any of the Beatles solo?
No.
Paul Mellon?
No.
Paul Murphy? Paul Nicholson?
Yeah, well, we were there together. We saw Paul McCartney at Hampden in Glasgow in 2010, and we saw him at the Hydro in Glasgow in 2018. Great gigs.
Yep, and which one did you prefer?
I actually liked the second one better, but I don't know if that was because it was indoor and it was more intimate. And
You're on a timer here,
Yeah.
Paul. So I would say 2010. So Paul Mellon, favourite 3 Beatles albums?
Help, Revolver, and Abbey Road.
2 minutes left.
Hard Day's
Murphy.
Night, Rubber Soul, and Sgt. Pepper's.
Paul?
Revolver, the White Album, and Abbey Road.
I would go Abbey Road. In fact, yes, I would go Abbey Road, Hard Day's Night, and Sgt. Pepper. Favourite Beatles song?
Here
Paul
Comes the Sun.
Hey Jude.
Paul Murphy? Paul Nicholson?
Across the Universe.
I would go Hey Jude as well. So, who is your favourite Beatle?
Paul McCartney.
George Harrison.
Paul McCartney.
For me, Paul McCartney. Well, we normally ask what were the guests doing at the time of release, but none of us were born, so we'll jump to the next one. When and where did you first hear the White Album?
University.
And probably 1993 when I started collecting the Beatles albums, and first time I heard the whole album.
First time I heard the album would be in the late 80s after watching the complete Beatles documentary.
1 minute remaining.
For me, probably when I was off sick from school, my dad's vinyl collection. Favourite track from the
Cry,
album?
Baby, Cry.
While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
While My Guitar Gently Weeps also.
I would also go for While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Least favourite track?
While My
Revolution
Guitar
9.
Gently Weeps.
Revolution 1.
Revolution 9.
30 seconds to go.
Revolution 9 for me. And final question, album rating out of 5.
4.
5.
5.
7.
5. Well, we're talking Beatles. Let's see. Does anybody have any good Beatles jokes? And I'll maybe actually start with one that I just seen tonight, which did make me laugh. And you guys haven't heard it yet. So brother Paul has. So here it is for the other 2 Pauls. Why can't you use the restroom at a Beatles reunion concert?
Because there's no John.
For our American
Oh, ba-bum! Anybody know any others?
Not that repeatable.
Not
that
I suppose one.
Yeah.
I was thinking of what Beatles songs best describes all the dates I've been on with women. Hello, goodbye.
That's a good one. I thought you were going to say "Let It Be."
I am the walrus.
Yeah.
It lasts just about as long as well.
The long and winding road. Yeah.
Long, long, long. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what she said, though.
That's a good one, actually. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
My wife says she's going to jump off a cliff because of my obsession with the Beatles. At first, I didn't believe it, but then I saw her standing there.
I think help would be appropriate for that one.
Yeah.
The Beatles were in this. The Beatles were in the studio making up ideas for a new song. Paul says, "Anyone got any ideas for how we should end Hey Jude?" John says, "Nah." George says, "Nah." Ringo says, "Nah." Now, there was another one. What was the name of the drummer in the Mexican Beatles tribute band?
Gringo Star.
That might be classed as racist nowadays.
I've been looking at the same page you are.
That's racist nowadays. Surely you can't
Yes,
say
Paul
that.
Murphy, that's a disgrace. I tell one of the things actually, I'm addicted to collecting vintage Beatles albums. I need help.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm going to get a
I'm
revolver
looking
out.
through you on that one.
All
I
right.
know.
I'm seeing a big long stick with a hook at the end of it coming towards me.
It's
trying to
podcast a
drag
hard
me
day's
off to
night,
the
anyway.
side of my room. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's going on that long.
Oh yes. Earlier on, when Ben came up the attic,
Here comes
I was
your son.
thinking to
That's
myself,
right.
here comes the sun.
That's a good one.
And here ends the segment of the podcast with Beatles jokes. So it's time to trim the fat. For this first selection, we're including all the songs in the 2018 expanded edition of the White Album, with the exception of tracks released on subsequent Beatles and solo albums. So, for example, Junk by Paul McCartney was not in contention, and something like She Came Through the Bathroom Window from the Beatles' Abbey Road album was not in contention. We can and could include Lady Madonna, a single that was recorded as part of the White Album sessions, and the B-side of that single, which was The Inner Light. Also in contention, which was recorded at the same time as the White Album, was Hey Jude, the biggest selling single of 1968, and its B-side, Revolution. And I think it's astonishing, a track as good as Hey Jude was not on that album. I know the Beatles had a policy of keeping their singles off their albums, but Revolution's a B-side. I think most bands would be delighted to have one song as good as Revolution in their entire career. Crazy. So before we spin the wheel to find out who's going to tell us their running order, what tracks they've included in their version of the White Album, we should probably discuss the album cover, which was just a plain white cover, which is very much in stark contrast to their previous album, Sgt. Pepper. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
I think it was, yeah. I mean, I think it was while it was very minimal compared to the Sgt. Pepper's album cover, I think I had just as much thought to it. It was still designed as a pop art type cover. I think I had a lot of planning going into it. Unique serial number being added onto it as well. So I think while it was still, it looked very minimal, it was actually very calculated.
Yeah, Paul.
Yes, I'll go along with it as well. Sometimes the simplest things are the most effective in music, particularly music. We all remember very simple tunes better than more complicated ones. And I think the same is true for album covers. We all remember the White Album because that's it, it's just a white cover. But then if you try and describe Sgt. Pepper to somebody, you try and describe something to people on the album cover, you probably struggle. And same with other album covers as well from other bands, like Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, the Prism. That's simple and memorable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why it was a lot more effective as an album cover than some of the other ones that they had.
Thanks, Brother Paul.
Yeah, I really like it for that reason, that it's more minimalistic when you think about its predecessor. And for me, it kind of reflected the time more as well, and rather than just kind of trying to repeat what they'd done before, they totally turned it around and more back to basics. And I think the album cover reflects that.
Yeah, for me, it's a work of genius, really, because I think with Sgt. Pepper, you had taken what they were doing with that, all the colour and all the variety, and you really can't top that. So they went in totally the opposite direction, which is the genius of it. And it's been as hugely influential as Sgt. Pepper, because how many bands now release an album with just a plain colour on it? Metallica's Black Album, case in point. And so it's influencing that. Who else has got albums that everybody just goes by the colour? Was it Weezer? Did Weezer not have an album that was just the colour of the colour?
Well, you've got the Beatles of the blue and the red.
That's right.
That's, again, unofficial names, isn't it?
Yeah. That's true. Okay, guys, thank you for that. So let's actually get ready to spin the wheel to find out who's going to be talking us through their selections first. Are you excited?
Yay!
Are you nervous? Okay, here it goes. I think we can safely say that the chances are it's going to be a Paul. It's going to be up first. And indeed it is. It is. Mr. Paul Murphy, talk us through your song selection and sequencing, Mr. Murphy.
When I was looking at this, I sort of thought, do I do it based on quality and try and pick the best songs? And then you've got the things like, you've got like Hey Jude that's in there as well. You've got Lady Madonna. You even got like Hey Bulldog that you could add in there across the universe. But what I tried to do was I tried to put together a sequence that was based on an actual Beatles album, because, and the Beatles I mean by the Beatles actually playing together as a band or feeling like they're playing together as a band. And I think that's one of the things with the White Album is that at times it feels like as if it's a bit of a solo album. And there's quite a lot of songs where there are literally no other Beatles on it, apart from the main Beatle that's singing. So I tried to focus on that. I noticed that there was the way that most of these songs that came through was actually, a lot of them were recorded after July 1968, which was when Ringo Starr quit the band. So he quit in July 1968. So I'm going to start with side one, and I'm going to stick with a lot of the sequencing very similar to the White Album, because I think actually some of the songs do work really well together. So I'm going to start off with side one, Back in the USSR, because although Ringo's not on drums, it still feels like a Beatles song. And then segue into Dear Prudence, because I think that still really, really works. Again, Ringo's not on drums on that, but it does feel like a band playing together. Then next, I'm going to go with Glass Onion, followed by Obla Di, Obla Da. Again, all the Beatles are playing on that. Then While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Then Happiness is a Warm Gun. And then I'd finish that side with I Will. And something that we'll see as I'm doing this is there's a lot more John Lennon songs than Paul McCartney songs. And I don't know if that's because Paul McCartney at this time was getting a bit more confident and was treating it as a kind of solo project in a way, whereas John Lennon maybe needed the rest of the band. So that's 7 songs at 21 minutes I've got for the first side. And then the second side, start off with Birthday, which is one of the few rare, genuine Lennon-McCartney songs from that era, where they both wrote parts of it, although John Lennon did say it was garbage in his infamous Playboy interview, but I still think it's a really good song. So start off with Birthday, going to Your Blues, and then Everybody's Got Something to Hide, except for Me and My Monkey. Then we've got Helter Skelter, then Sexy Sadie, followed by Honey Pie, because although it feels a bit like a Paul McCartney song, actually the whole band, the Beatles were playing on that. George Harrison was playing bass on that one. And then I
really? Didn't know that.
With Cry Baby Cry, because it's a good ending to it, and also it's got a nice Can You Take Me Back at the end of it as well, which is a nice little way to finish it off. So that's 7 songs, and that's just shy of 23 minutes. So in total, it's 43, just over 43 minutes, and 16 songs in total. And the other songs that I've left out of it, I mean, there's some, I don't think that's necessarily a better album than the White Album, because I've left out things like Blackbird, because it is just really a Paul McCartney solo song. So is Martha My Dear. It's might be similar to like what do you call it? To Honey Pie, similar sound, but actually it is just Paul McCartney on it by himself. None of the other Beatles are on it. And Piggies as well, left that out again, feels like a George Harrison solo song. So left out a lot of Paul McCartney songs, but that's what I've gone with. Not necessarily the best songs, I would say, but maybe what feels like a lost Beatles album, and that maybe in an alternative universe they were actually all still getting on with each other and they were all playing as a band.
Great. Love it. Thank you very much for that, Paul. Anybody got any questions for Paul around his selections? No. I've got a question. So I'm very surprised Revolution number 9 didn't make the cut, Paul. Can you explain me?
Yeah, I think that's maybe one of the, if you look at the Beatles White Album, it does feel at times like there's a bit of filler being added into it. And I think it does work, only the Beatles could get away with that. But, Revolution 9 it does genuinely feel like they've gone, how do we fill this out a bit? And also a bit of egos as well, that nobody would say no to John Lennon.
Number 9.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that, Paul. So let us now spin the wheel to find out who is up next. And it's spinning. And it's me. I was kind of hoping I would be last, to be perfectly honest, but let me talk through my selection. So I've not taken the same approach as Paul. I've just went with, I actually have left off some tracks which I really, really like and even love. But I did want to kind of have an album that flowed together. And when I look at an album, I'm always thinking of, a kind of kick butt opener and normally keep the momentum going with the second track, maybe slow it down, and so very much like sequencing a set list for a concert. So that's what I've done with this album. And funnily enough, Paul, I've pretty much kept the same track running order as the original album as well, because I think the sequencing of the first side is fantastic, actually, the first part of it, and I don't see any reason to change it. So yeah, I kick off with McCartney's classic rocker Back in the USSR, which goes into Dear Prudence, which is an amazing song, one of my favourite Beatles songs there. That then leads us into Glass Onion, just like the original album. And I've got Oobla-Dee Oobla-Da as my fourth song here, just like the album. However, I would replace it with the Take 3 version, which is on the expanded edition of the album. So it was an earlier, I believe Oobla-Dee Oobla-Da was recorded numerous, over 100 times. Paul McCartney kept trying to perfect it. And I think it was actually slated to be a single, but I think the rest of the band were sick of it by the end of the recording, that they never released it as a single. And I think it was Marmalade then released it as a cover version, and it got to number 1. But yeah, I think the Take 3 version is slightly better because it's maybe got a bit more drive, a bit more kick to it, which I really like. So I would slot that version in there. After it, I think we've kind of had 4 fairly fast-paced songs. So what we'll do is we'll slow it down a bit with Mother Nature's Son, which is an amazing McCartney song, but another solo effort. I love the orchestra in it from George Martin. I would then pick up the pace again with Birthday. So Lennon and McCartney rocker there. The penultimate song in side 1 for me would be a nice acoustic one from John Lennon, Julia, obviously named after his mum who passed away when he was younger. And I would finish off the side with While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which I believe is the best song on the entire album. I would go with the full album band version featuring Eric Clapton, although the acoustic version, which you can get on Anthology 3 and on the expanded edition, is fantastic as well. But I would go with the fully electric version. So that is for the first side. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tracks, about 25 minutes there. Flipping it over to side 2, I would start with need to kick some butt and grab everybody's attention. So I would go with Lennon's Revolution. I would go with the B-side to Hey Jude version, though, because that is, I think, infinitely better than the one that was released on the White Album. Brilliant song. And that really kind of starts the second half and wakes you up. I would then slow it down slightly with one of McCartney's best songs, which is Blackbird. So an acoustic track. Pick up the pace again with another McCartney classic, the Lady Madonna. Obviously not on the White Album, so that's a single that was recorded at the same time. So I'd go with Lady Madonna, slow it down slightly with I'm So Tired, then pick up the pace again with, I think, one of McCartney's best songs again, which is Helter Skelter. Really great rocker. Slow it down slightly with Lennon's Cry Baby Cry, which I think is a really, really underrated gem of a song. And I would finish the album with what is arguably the greatest song of all time and was not included on the White Album, but recorded at the same time. I would go with the best-selling song of 1968, and I think the Beatles' best-selling song overall. I would go with Hey Jude. So side 2, I think it's about 23 minutes, and the number of tracks on the second side is 7. So all in all, that is coming in at just under 50 minutes. But to meet the 50 minutes, I had to take off a few things that I really liked, such as Why Don't We Do It in the Road, Martha, My Dear. What else was great? I love Rocky Raccoon. So yeah, it was hard leaving off some of these really good songs that were on there. So at this point, what we'll do is we'll take a break, and what we'd now like to play for you is an interview recorded with a massive Beatles fan who was actually around at the time of the White Album release, just about to turn 18 at the time, and that is myself and Paul's father, Martin. So he's going to talk us through what it was like at the time, how well the Beatles were thought of, and how he missed out on going to see the Beatles, even though he had a ticket. Okay, so thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Father. And I think we'll start with our first question, which is, you had tickets to see the Beatles in 1964.
Yes.
Yet you never made the concert. Tell us why.
I had an accident. I actually fell through a glass door when I was 13, 14-year-old, and I had to give my ticket away because I couldn't go to the concert.
That's,
So I wasn't too happy about that. That was the one and only time I actually had a ticket to go and see the Beatles live.
and where were they playing?
ABC in Lothian Road.
Right.
And
Who got your ticket?
well, my nephew,
All right.
Ronnie, he was a lucky person to get the ticket.
Did he enjoy it?
Oh yeah, he loved it. Yeah, and he made sure that I knew that he loved it.
Did he actually hear anything?
No, he never did.
You just got to see them.
Yeah. I remember standing in the queue, and the queue went down Morrison Street, round the corner into Semple Street, round the corner into Fountain Bridge. It kept going.
Yeah.
And to stand there for days, I finally got my ticket and then never got to see them live. But
Well, on the plus side, you eventually got to see Paul McCartney live twice,
yeah,
2010
twice.
and 2018.
With yourself
Yep.
and your brother. We went to see them at Hampden and then...
The Glasgow Hydro.
That's
yeah.
right. And
Brilliant
I have
shows.
to, when I was listening to the iPod earlier on there, I actually preferred his first one at Hampden outside
Yeah, same
live.
here. Mhm.
Yeah, I preferred that.
His
It
voice was
brilliant.
stronger then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Nice summer day as well.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing day to actually hear Paul McCartney singing these songs live that I'd bought as when he was with the Beatles all these years ago.
Yeah.
And I still love the songs.
So you were going to be turning 18 when the White Album was coming out. So what was the
That's right.
public perception of the Beatles at that time?
They were talking about the Beatles breaking up a lot. There wasn't much harmony between them, and I think it was George Martin actually that kept them together. And as you talked about on your podcast there that the Beatles reached a peak in Sgt. Pepper, and then they levelled off after that. There's nowhere else to go, so they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And George Martin, to a certain extent, was there to guide them, but they weren't always listening to him.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
So, where does the White Album for you rank amongst your favourite Beatles albums? So, I mean, what is your favourite Beatles albums, and where does the White Album rank amongst them?
Well, I would say Sgt. Pepper was my favourite album by the Beatles because it was by the Beatles, the four of them together, and George Martin. And previous to that, again, it was the combined band together, and I would say Rubber Soul, Revolver, and Abbey Road. Again, that was a bit of a mixture. I wouldn't say the four of them were joined together at that time, but yeah. But the White Album, I love the White Album, and the two double album, I wouldn't have changed it. I would have kept every song on that album. It was what the Beatles done. They led from the front. Whether it be just the album cover, because you noticed that it was white. Every other album cover had colours in it. The songs on it, even Revolution 9, at the time it was off the time. It was the aura of that era, the 60s. And that's things you could do that and people didn't complain about it. You could write a silly book and people read it. It was just off its time.
And do you have any favourite tracks from the White Album?
Most of them.
Yeah. So I think you've maybe said previously, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, perhaps.
Oh, yeah. That
Back
was
in the USSR.
Yeah. I have to say, but myself, I was a great John Lennon fan, as opposed to the other three Pauls and
Dear
yourself.
Prudence.
Yeah. Things like Dear Prudence, absolutely. I love listening to John Lennon's songs. They seem to be musically about him, not himself, but his life to a certain extent. Whereas Paul McCartney wrote popular songs, brilliant songs back in the USSR. These songs were popular, whereas John Lennon wrote from his heart. He wrote what he wanted to write. If you liked it, good. If you didn't like it, too bad.
And do you have a overall favourite Beatles song?
Oh, that's so hard, Stephen. So hard.
The answer you're looking for is Hey Jude.
Yeah, Hey Jude was a great song, but I preferred A Day in the Life, Tomorrow Never Knows, Strawberry Fields, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I could go on forever. I haven't got a favourite Beatles song. Revolution, Rain, Ticket to Ride. I could go on for all of them. They all mean something to me.
Great, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time
I
this
enjoyed it.
afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, thank you, Father, for that great interview. Thank you, Father. So let's move on to our third album selection. And we spin the wheel for the penultimate time. And that is bringing up for us the name. Guides us to the legend that is Paul Mellon.
Thank you, Stephen. My selection is basically all the songs that I like from the album. And they've been in the same order as they appear in the album. Because if I like an album the way it is, it'll take a lot to change my mind about it, to change anything about it, the songs or the order. So essentially, I've just basically trimmed the fat in keeping with the spirit of this podcast. So the first side, I start with Back in the USSR, which segs nicely into Dear Prudence, which was my favourite song on the album, which is now Cry Baby Cry. Then after Dear Prudence, I have Glass Onion, because I think it's just a jaunty, lively song after sort of the sadness of Dear Prudence, I suppose. Then after Glass Onion, I have While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Although I must admit, I'm torn between the album version, the electric guitar version, and the version we hear on the Love album, the acoustic one with the orchestral accompaniment. I think both are superb.
Yep, it's great.
Of course, quite completely different songs. Completely different styles, I should say. But I think it just epitomises the genius of the Beatles and George Martin. After that, there's Happiness is a Warm Gun. I think it's just quite a mellow song. And then after that, sort of liven things up a bit with Martha, My Dear. Followed by Rocky Raccoon, which is, I think it's a sort of cheeky wee number. It's like a Western saloon bar song with the piano accompaniments. So that would be my side A. And it comes in as 7 songs, so roughly 22 minutes. And then just to kick off side B, it's a bit lively, bit of a lively song, Year Blues. And then bring things down a bit slower with Mother Nature's Son, which is a cracking song with Paul on his guitar with the orchestral accompaniment. And then pick the pace up again with Helter Skelter. And then down again with Long, 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 which I think is absolutely superb. It's a beautiful song. And following Long, 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 it'll be Revolution 1. Oh, I do like Revolution, the sort of pimped up version, the more rock and roll version, but Revolution 1 is just a style that I've never heard the Beatles play on any album. It's more sort of doo-wop, sort of Beach Boys style. And I think it's a really good song, really good version of that song. And that will be followed by Honey Pie. Again, a completely different style of song to all the others. And I end with Cry Baby Cry, and sort of keeping with the spirits of what was going on with the group at the time. All the arguments and recriminations. It was quite sad, really. And so I thought it would be apt to finish the album with that particular song. So again, for side B, it's 7 songs again, about 21 minutes. So a grand total of 43 minutes altogether.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Mr. Mellon?
No.
So again, Paul, I see no Revolution.
It's a surprise, that one, isn't it? I noticed nobody's mentioned so far Good Night, the very last song.
Yeah. I mean, I like that. It's a nice song. It's actually a nice album closer.
Paul, I was just going to say, I hear that every Saturday night when I'm uptown.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I think is interesting about the whole. So I've been reading the Complete Beatles Chronicle by Mark Lewison.
Oh yeah.
Which, I mean, I've had for 30 odd years now. So it just gives like a almost diary account of the Beatles, so the recording sessions and stuff. So if you look at 1968, I think what's interesting is that with Ringo Starr quitting the band in let's see when it was August, so that he quit it. Actually, leading up to those recordings, most of the time seemed to be spent recording Good Night and what else was it as well? So it was Good Night was the big one that they spent all this time recording. It was like Ringo Starr songs that they were recording, and yet he walked out of it. So I don't know if he felt a bit sad. Don't Pass Me By was spent a lot of time recording. I can't remember how many takes it was, but it was ridiculous.
I know, I'm surprised nobody mentioned that in their top list.
I think Don't Pass Me By had also been, was that not 4 or 5 years? That was in preparation by Ringo. Do you not mention it like 1964 and 65 that he'd been working on his
probably,
own
and then they would have just vetoed it probably at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think between the three of us so far, most of the tracks on the album have made it in there. So let's see if Mr. Paul Nicholson's going to fill in some of the missing blanks at this moment in time. Is Don't Pass Me By going to make the cut in his selection?
Okay, well,
right,
you
Paul,
just have to wait and see and save the best for last. Okay, so my selection, like everyone else, I think the way it starts with the opening two tracks, like sequencing in together almost as it was in Sgt. Pepper as well, with that and with A Little Help from My Friends. So the first, the opener's back in the USSR, and then Dear Prudence, the way they say together, segueing in there. And because we've started, I'm thinking about the flow of the album, because we started like with a bang back in the USSR, Dear Prudence is kind of taking it down a wee bit, introspective, and then I want to bring it back up a bit. So Revolution, and it's the version that was used for the video, the promo video, when there's the shoe ups, and I just love that. The vocals in that are amazing. So it's not technically the B-side version of Hey Jude, but it's the vocals on top of that were done for the promo video. I think that's brilliant, that version. So that'd be third track. And then I'd maybe take things down a wee bit after that and put in Mother Nature's Son. And then after that, Opla Di Opla Da, like yourself, Stephen, it would be take 3, that was on the Anthology 3 CD and the expanded edition of the White Album. Okay. And then we haven't had any other songs other than Lennon and McCartney, so While My Guitar Gently Weeps would come next, which is my favourite on the album and one of my favourite Beatles songs in general. And then I would go on to the 7th song would be Lady Madonna, which was released at the start of 68. But, you know, it was released in that period, that year, so I'm going to put that on the album because it's quite up. And bucks in that, it's got that. And then I'm going to finish side 1 with Julia, so it kind of quietens it down a bit. And as it was actually on side 2 of the vinyl, the end of the first disc, so of the White Album. Okay. And for side two, I'm going to go on to start with Why Don't We Do It in the Road? Just something a wee bit different, something quite short, but it's building us up to the next track, which is Helter Skelter. And so I just feel, like quite a good, strong introduction to side two after having Julia at the end of side one. So it's quite a heavy. And then Happiness is a Warm Gun, which is a great song. It kind of starts a bit slowly, but then it ties in with that whole feeling of back to basics, that almost rock and roll style at the end, sort of late 50s style. And then go on to Blackbird, which is an amazing song. And then track 13, Sexy Sadie, which is a brilliant song, and obviously is about the Maharishi. But John Lennon was too scared to call it Dear Maharishi, What Have You Done? And the penultimate song, because there's been such a mix on this album, eclectic mix, that people might, because there's been so many ups and downs in terms of the tempo, that I'm So Tired would be the penultimate song. So it's, that reflects that, and it's quite short, and that segues into the last song, track 15, Hey Jude, which was released at the time, as you know, but wasn't on the White Album, although the single was released around the same period. And I just think all the na-na-na-nas and the fact that it's the longest song, which is why side B is shorter than side A, but just all the tempo at the end and that sort of togetherness, I just think that would be a nice way to close out the album with that. So that's mine.
Okay, so you've got 8. Brilliant, thanks. You've got 8 songs on your side A and 7 on your side B. So, okay, do you know what your times are for both sides on the overall album?
It's 49 minutes. No, it's 49 minutes. 49 minutes, and I think it must be about. I think side A is maybe 24 minutes, and another side would be 25 minutes, if my arithmetic serves me. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Paul Nicholson?
Oh, no. I think that was very nice.
Thank you.
Yes, good selection. I was going to... you've got Why Don't We Do It in the Road. That was one of the ones that I had to take out for length, and for a long time that was actually going to start my side too, as well. And then had to drop it there. So I think songs that haven't made anybody's cut are, just to summarise, nobody went for Wild Honey Pie, which was just a bit of a 53-second interlude anyway, really. The continuing story of Bungalow Bill, was that in contention?
No.
For
yeah,
anybody?
I mean, I think I had it in contention. For me, it was on just because it's a bit of a Beatles song, like they're all together on it. But comparing it to the other songs that I put on my selection, I just didn't feel it was quite good enough to make it in.
For me, it was a bit filler.
Yeah. Another one. Mm-hmm. Filler. Yeah, okay. What about Piggies?
Yeah.
No thoughts on that?
An odd song, to be honest. It's something I've actually considered at all.
Yeah.
There's all the Charles Manson connotations as well after it, isn't it?
I think it would be... I think an interesting thing would be to go through to, I've done it as based on all the Beatles being there, but just looking at my notes for Piggies, it's another one of these songs that was produced when George Martin left, and Chris Thomas took over, who went on to produce the Sex Pistols. So you have to wonder how many of the songs didn't have much involvement with George Martin in it that didn't make it.
Yeah, good point. Don't Pass Me By, Ringo Was that in contention with anyone?
Nah.
Not really, no.
Okay, maybe we best move on. Next one is Savoy Truffle, George Harrison's one where I think it really just reels off the contents of a box of chocolates.
Right about Eric Clapton's...
Is that a Glasgow horn singer?
An apple horn.
Sweet Tooth.
Sorry.
I think that was one. Yeah, John Lennon wasn't on that song at all, which is why I didn't pick that. He's not on it. He'd left it. I think he was somewhere else at that point.
Yeah, it's a decent song. It's not a bad song, but yeah, nothing particularly, I think, striking about it. Revolution 9 is a bit of the kicking. We've given it a good kicking already. I will say before we move away from it is, if you're talking about, it's probably the most avant-garde piece of art that has sold to millions, and it's snuck its way onto a Beatles record. Good Night we've kind of talked about, which I think just leaves the two B-sides from Lady Madonna. In fact, no, just the one B-side, Lady Madonna. Yeah, that's right. So, which was the Inner Light. Was anybody thinking of putting that on there?
I never give it a thought, but I've got Past Masters Volume 1, which the song's on that. It's a really good song, actually. It's obviously a lot of Indian influences with, I don't know what it's called, but it's not the sitar. I think the sitar's not on it, if I remember. Might be. But it's one of these, I think it's that violin type thing, you know. I don't know what it's called. But...
yeah, it was, he says, consulting the Revolution in the Head book by Ian MacDonald, which is excellent. But yeah, with the Inner Light, it was just talk amongst yourselves while I flick through to find it. Anyway, what's your thoughts about
the Inner Light into it? It would turn it into, I suppose, more similar to Sgt. Pepper's, Within You, Without You,
Love You Too.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just not sure it fits into the rest of the album. I mean, they had so many good songs. I mean, I'd say the one thing that I sort of did think about my list of Beatles songs, that it felt like they almost had so many songs to work on that they didn't quite put 100% of their effort on a few songs. So I think if you think about any of the album lists that we've put forward, if you imagine they all put a total amount of effort onto it, it could have easily have been the Beatles' greatest album. But a lot of the songs, they've not quite put full effort into it.
Yeah, I mean, what does it say about it here? So yes, it was. I totally agree. It would fit in more on a Sgt. Pepper Magical Mystery Tour Revolver album than the White Album. So, which is why perhaps it was released as a B-side instead of being on that album there. But yeah, that was. I think Harrison was doing the score for a film called Wonderwall. And I think the soundtrack for it was very much Indian influenced, and this is where that sprang from. So yeah, I think from that it had the basic track of the Inner Light, and I think he cajoled into Lennon and McCartney. Oh no, let's see. Harrison had to be cajoled by Lennon and McCartney before he would abandon his native caution and commit himself to actually moving ahead and recording it. And the rest of the band liked it, so they put it on the B-side, which was Lady Madonna, their final Parlophone single before they moved to Apple. There we are. There we are. History lesson.
And
Stephen, I was just going to say
my
that
friend.
there's a couple of songs that we didn't choose that you haven't mentioned as well. Everybody's got something to hide except for me and my monkey.
I had that.
Somebody had that.
No, somebody had that.
Apologise. Right. Okay.
Yep. Any others?
Where's that? I mean, I guess the question is the would anybody have considered the Yellow Submarine songs for it? Because like Hey Bulldog, for example, which was recorded during the Lady Madonna video, and I always felt like those songs were kind of done for Yellow Submarine, but could have probably been part of the White Album.
Yeah, for me, Paul, I think the bulk of the stuff on Yellow Submarine is in that more psychedelic vein, and so it's more suited to Magical Mystery Tour, Sgt. Pepper, with the exception of Hey Bulldog, which is actually one of my favourite Beatles tracks. I think it's a brilliant song, and I think it's a real shame it was kind of tossed away on the Yellow Submarine soundtrack, because for me, Hey Bulldog should have been either, it could have been a B-side or put on the White Album, because for me, Hey Bulldog is better than a lot of the stuff that's on it. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
what about you guys?
I think there's, I do wonder if there's almost like another album in there that it does sort of feel, so doing a bit of research on this, it felt like after, like they did, so if you think about it, they did Sgt. Pepper's, they did Magical Mystery Tour, and I felt like they almost lost a bit of their direction in a way. They were kind of, not coasting along, but they were going in and recording stuff and didn't really feel like there was much of a goal to what they were doing, which might explain all the tension that was going on and stuff. So I think Hey Bulldog is a brilliant song. I mean, you've got like Hey Bulldog, you've got Lady Madonna, you've got The Inner Light, Hey Jude, Across the Universe. All songs that Across the Universe is another great song that's kind of not thrown away, but it's sort of like appeared on Let It Be, and then
it was put on the shelf almost. Yeah.
It's like they didn't quite know what to do with it.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, I mean, I think the Yellow Submarine stuff, with the exception of Bulldog. You had All Together Now, which again more of a you kind of see that on the White Album as well. To be fair,
I see that more Sgt. Pepper.
And it's again catchy
also the
tune.
Unreleased stuff, like What's the New Mary Jane or Not Guilty.
And Sour Milk Sea.
Not Guilty is decent.
Yeah,
that's a good
Circles song. Was another
Child
one.
of Nature, which became Jealous Guy. Junk, Paul McCartney.
Which that's, I think, the one that became Jealous Guy, the Jealous Guy Lennon
definitely.
version is obviously superior to Child of Nature.
Yeah,
brilliant song.
They were all done in India, weren't they? A lot of those acoustic ones.
For me, it's actually just astonishing. I think especially the expanded White Album, where you get all these demos and songs that didn't make the cut, or ones that were reworked into either later Beatles albums or solo albums. It's astonishing, really. When you think about it, it's astonishing the quality of the songs, really, and how many there is, and how high the quality is, isn't it?
So many songs that, it's hard to believe that in a year they managed to do that much.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the quote. Can't remember who the quote was, but and it's in the Revolution in the Head book, where Ian MacDonald breaks the Beatles the recording down into 3 stages, which is going up, the top, and then coming down again. And the coming down again starts with now, where was it? Yeah, it starts after Sgt. Pepper. However, the quote he's got, which is by Philip Larkin, is, "When you get to the top, there is nowhere to go but down." But the Beatles could not get down. So here's the big question then, guys. Would any of you prefer that this album was released as a single album? Because that's what the Beatles producer George Martin wanted to do. He wanted to cut it down to a single album Would any of you made that decision?
No, I would have
Paul
kept
Mellon?
it as a double. They had so much material that I think a double album was the most appropriate one.
I think
Paul
it's
Murphy?
difficult because the double album format makes it sort of like more unique and maybe more forgiving as a Beatles album. I think, to be honest, if they had gone with a single album, they probably would have had to improve the quality a bit in terms of actually, just the actual quality of the songs. And I'm not sure they were at that point of being told to do that. I don't think George Martin or EMI were at the point of being able to say, you need to record this a bit better. You need to put more time into it. So
they would have just told him to F off, probably.
Yeah, so,
at that point,
I mean, if they put out a single album, it probably would have reviewed quite badly. So yeah, I think sticking as a double album, unless they all went in and re-recorded and added more stuff to it.
Okay. Brother Paul?
I think it should stay as a double album. And there's a few reasons. Just that it wasn't perfect. And it had things like Revolution 9 on it that weren't maybe great. But I think that's what makes it a great album, because it's totally different from Sgt. Pepper. And I really admire them, like not just following the same recipe, that they did something totally different. So I quite like it, that it's very different, and it's a minimalistic album cover and everything. It's back to basics. So no, that's what I like about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think with any double album, you will always invariably come across songs which perhaps are not as strong as the best stuff on the album, and would have been dropped if it were a single album. And I think that's the blessing and the curse of a double album. It can make for a more interesting experience, because you do have those peaks and troughs, and you do sometimes get something that might be a little bit different, which would not have made a normal single album. So, yeah, for me, I would keep it as a double. And for a double album, I think the quality of the songs throughout is fairly consistent there, and we're talking about top songs. I don't think you deviate far away from being a top song from one to the next, with a few exceptions. So yeah, brilliant album, classic album, their best-selling one, and arguably just so. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you all for joining me and Brother Paul for our first podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And Paul.
Thank you very much.
And Paul. Yeah, always a pleasure. And I'm sure we'll have you guys back on for one of our future episodes. I'd like to thank you all for listening as we dip our toes into podcasting for the first time. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please maybe subscribe, share with your friends, provide feedback, and you can even contact us as well through the details on the site. Look out for our next podcast, which is going to be changing slightly. So we've gone from 1968, we're moving to 1991, and some hard rock with Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion 1 album, which was another double album actually released at the time, and we want to bring that down to a single. So join us for that. So until next time, we're going to say good night. Sleep
Don't
tight.
let the bed bugs bite.
Dream.
Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Sweet dream for me. Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
and there was the Vietnam riots. The Vietnam riots.
Down now.
The Vietnam riots.
When I was in now.
The Rodney Marsh riots.
The Rodney Marsh riots, that's right.
Oh, the Vietnam.
I was in the jungle.
Let me see if I can. Oh, that's right. Let me see.
Robert Kennedy as well. He was assassinated in '68.
That's right. He was assassinated. That's right. He was assassinated.
That's right.
That same year.
And so was Vietnam.
So was Rodney Marsh.
JFK. Man was on the moon that year, the first time.
We didn't start the fire.
But the fire was burned. Okay. So I'm just going to get. Okay, let me see. Right, okay. Right, we'll go back up. Okay.
Are we keeping this band?
Maybe you want to talk about Vietnam.
I love it. I love